If you have a sibling, you may understand the pain of getting into your regular squabbles, especially when they're the other gender. You fight over stuff like who gets their turn on the Xbox, who gets to take the first shower, who ate the last of the leftover tacos, or who took the last piece of cheesecake. And sometimes you depart on an unending revenge quest to find your sister who murdered the girl you love. You know, typical sibling bickering sort of stuff. Sword of the Demon Hunter only really came onto my radar because some people I followed on other social media platforms mentioned it. And since I like to gorge myself on seasonal anime content, I figured I'd go and check it out. And I genuinely do not regret the decision because this one has been an excellent experience. The basic premise of this show is that Jinta is a wandering warrior hunting demons for money. But his almost noble mode of conduct he usually operates under belies the tragedy he suffered through. At a young age, he ran away from home to protect his sister from their abusive father. They were later adopted into a family in another village, only for the adopted parents to then be lost to an attack by demons, and for Jinta and the adopted family's daughter, Shirayuki, to take up roles as sentinel and priestess. And finally, to top all of this tragedy off, in pseudo-NTR fashion, Jinta and Shirayuki mutually decide not to pursue their love for each other in favor of the betterment of the village. And that's where the younger sister Suzune, in very based NTR Slayer fashion, goes and kills Shirayuki, who she believes betrayed Jinta for another man, leaving the brother she once adored with nothing but a bitter past. And thus begins Jinta's long quest for revenge against his sister, who became the demon of all demons on the night he lost everything he held dear. The immediate response I see a lot of people having to this one is that it's very similar to Demon Slayer, and I can't really deny that, as you do have a main character who is motivated by revenge to kill demons who have special powers, all while their sisters are tangentially involved in all of it. But I think that's about where the similarities end, because where Demon Slayer spec'd all its skill points into maxing out animation, Sword of the Demon Hunter focuses on a very detailed writing style. That and, well, Tanjiro is out to try and save his sister and return her back to being human. Jinta is probably more likely to mount her head on a pike. And this is not a knock on Demon Slayer because its writing is still good, but Sword of the Demon Hunter has a significant edge when it comes to storytelling in my opinion. Aside from being named kind of after one of my favorite bands, Sword of the Demon Hunter makes several really good writing and directing decisions that are astoundingly remarkable and make this show a really good experience overall. Extended pilots are nothing too unusual, but this one does an excellent job of using all 50 minutes of its first episode to very effectively set up the series in a very well-paced and well-constructed manner at that. The fact that you can become intimately familiar with the characters in the first episode and get a good feel for their personalities and ways of thinking really sets up all the tragedy that will come about by the end of that first episode. Much the same way Oshinoko had an astounding first episode for this very same thing, where it ran a long time and covered a lot of material just to set up a really good sucker punch at the very end, Sword of the Demon Hunter endears you to the characters who ultimately become tragic victims, heartless villains, and revenge-consumed heroes before tossing you out onto the main body of the plot. But really, one of the things that I do appreciate about this show is how it tends to be very indirect with what it has to say while weaving together every bit of information in that section of the story into a much more spectacular experience. Episode 2 gives us a lot of information on why Jinta's father abused his sister, or well, half-sister actually, as we come to find out, since Suzune was a child conceived when a demon raped their mother. Ultimately, it gives us a good look into his previous life and his feelings towards his family at this moment in time, while giving us some closure on what happened while never doing it as directly as saying things out loud for you to understand or having some dramatic confrontation. You are given a lot of information, you are given some comments and stuff, and it very clearly conveys how everything has played out and how certain characters feel, and I like that. It will often dance pretty close to outright saying what it means, and it will do some things a little bit more directly, but it never quite gets to the point that it tells you what happens to your face, and it leaves that much up to the audience to comprehend. Like I said, it doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't give you some big dramatic confrontation. It gives you small pieces of information mixed in with what's happening on screen, and you are left to sort of assume everything that is going on from that point. Similar things are done in the very next 2-arc episode, where Jinta teams up with a demon, ironically, to hunt down a serial killer who's been abducting women and killing men in the streets. Mosuke, as this demon is known, turns out to be one who simply wants to live a peaceful life and avenge his human wife who was taken by the killers. He isn't a murderer or out to devour people or do anything evil, he just wants to live like a human. And in a very tragic, somber twist, we learn that the monster they were hunting the whole time was effectively the incarnation of Mosuke's wife, who, having fallen victim to a gang of rapists, would die and then become a monster that they would have to fight. It's a series that is steeped in tragedy and sad tales so far, and yet one that really gets you connected with the characters involved in all these events in a pretty mature and spectacular way. From a writing standpoint, it is phenomenal, but the overall animation of this show, the visual appeal, is a bit lacking. If anything, that less than ideal animation is the only significant weakness, whereas the writing in and of itself is enough to make this show worth it. Because it leaves a lot for you to put together yourself, it ends up being kind of satisfying, because it treats you like an adult who's able to read and grasp all these concepts and the things that it's saying. It doesn't need to spell it out to you. It doesn't need to be blunt. And that's one of the things, like I said earlier in the video, that I truly do appreciate about this show. Not many shows really do that much anymore for me, because the last time I watched something that would do this would have been, well, a Shinichiro Watanabe project from over a decade ago, like Cowboy Bebop or Samurai Champloo. It's a style of writing you just don't get from a lot of anime anymore. It takes on a very mature air, and it's a breath of fresh air for all of the things it does differently in that regard. So that's ultimately why this one is one of my favorite shows of this season. It's a solid entry that probably deserved better animation than it got for how good the writing has actually been so far. And if you get a chance or even feel like it, go ahead and check it out. I do genuinely recommend this one.